Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I guess it's afternoon now. But before we begin, I'd like to wish Albertans a very happy new year ahead. Hopefully 2026 is a prosperous year for all of us. As you know, earlier this week, we announced that the Honourable Rebecca Schultz, who was serving their province as Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, would be resigning from her cabinet position. Rebecca has served her province as a cabinet minister for over 6 years with distinction in a number of extremely challenging files. She served as Minister of Children's Services, as Minister of Municipal Affairs, and, as I said, most recently as Minister of Environment and Protected Areas. She will continue to serve her constituents with diligence and a deep-seated love for her community. And I know that she will continue to bring a valuable perspective to caucus until she departs in May. This morning, we had the opportunity to witness Her Honour, the Honourable Selma Lakhani, Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, preside over the swearing-in of Minister Grant Hunter, who has taken on the role of Minister of Environment and Protected Areas. Grant Hunter is also no stranger to Cabinet. He previously served as Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction and Associate Minister of Water, as well as our Chief Government Whip. He's been an MLA since 2015, bringing more than a decade of experience across a variety of roles. His constituents of Tabor-Warner have benefited from his wisdom and dedication, and he will bring that same perspective to his new role as Minister of Environment and Protected Areas. We also witnessed the swearing-in of Justin Wright, our new Chief Government Whip. He's continuing to serve as Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Health for Southern Alberta, as well as the Military Liaison for our UCP caucus. And he will be an excellent asset to our caucus leadership team and will hold the critically important role of working with caucus members and ensuring that the voices of their constituents are heard. As we start a new year, our government remains focused on making life better for Albertans. We will continue executing the mandate given to us by Albertans to build an economy that continues to attract record investment, create jobs, and to improve services that Albertans depend on, like healthcare and education. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Awesome. We'll start off with questions here in the room. We'll take one question, one follow-up. Please make sure to state your name and outlet before asking your question, and we'll get to the phones after in the room. Go ahead first with the mic.
Hi, I'm Matt Skase, Globe and Mail. Premier, last week it surfaced through court documents that a former AHS board member was surveyed, photographed, and harassed. He, of course, is a witness in support of former AHS CEO Athana Mentzelopoulos in the lawsuit over healthcare procurement contracts. You'll also recall that my colleague was photographed and harassed last year for her reporting on this. Does it concern you that people involved in this case are being intimidated?
Well, I know nothing about it, so that'll be a question, I suppose, for the courts.
Do you have anything to say about
harassment?
It's
before the courts, so I'd rather not comment on it until it gets resolved. Yeah, it's a live, active court case, and so I tend not to comment on those.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. We'll go ahead to our next question.
All right, I'm Felix Gagnier from Radio Canada. So Nordback Mining has revised their proposal for the Grassy Mountain mine with a smaller footprint and some more environmental protection, and we are starting to see some ads from the company promoting the project online. Do you expect them to submit a formal application in 2026?
Well, I would. There were 4 mining projects, as you recall, that were considered advanced mining projects that were allowed to continue on through the process, and Grassy Mountain was one of them. We've been very clear about the kind of expectations that we have from an environmental point of view, and so I would hope that they'll be able to meet all of the rigorous and environmental requirements. What I would say is that we heard loud and clear that beyond these 4 advanced projects, Albertans just simply do not want mining development on what has been described as Category 2 lands. That was one of the things that had been changed in the past. And so we have been working on buying back that freehold mineral rights and buying back those leases in order to make sure that Albertans are in possession of those leases so that it will be up to a future government to decide whether or not they want to develop that. But we have, I believe, taken back 30,000 hectares of development in or potential development, and we're going to continue working with companies to ensure that's the case. But as for the advanced projects, I'll allow them to go through the process.
And do you support the idea of a mine such as Grassy Mountain in the part of the in this part of the eastern slope of the Rockies?
Well, it was a mine that my understanding was in operation back in the 50s, And when 4 advanced mine projects were declared to be able to continue going through the process, they were one of them. So I'll allow them to continue to go through the process. But what I heard was that greenfield development on Category 2 lands was something that Albertans were very reluctant to give approval to, which is why we've changed the policy and we bought back the leases and the freehold on those lands so that they don't get developed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tim Brooks, CTV. Hey, any truth to some of the rumors going around right now that there could be an early election? Why or why not?
Well, we have fixed election dates in this province for a reason, and our fixed election date is set for October 18th of 2027. And the whole reason we have fixed election dates is so people have certainty and can do their planning. That would be one thing. The second thing is we have had hundreds of thousands of newcomers come into the province in the last number of years, and so we're in the middle of an electoral boundary commission that is adding 2 seats. We want to make sure people have proper representation, and I'm not quite sure why everyone is so anxious to rush to an election. The incredible polling I've seen suggests we do very, very well in an early election. And so we've got a mandate that we want to execute over the next 2 years, and we intend to continue doing so.
Perfect. And then on the new environment minister, can you maybe give us an update on how some of the conversations have been going regarding the pipeline to the coast, that the conversations the environment minister has been having, and just kind of how you see those being passed off to someone under this new portfolio?
Well, what I anticipate with Minister Hunter, because he has already been our associate minister of water, is that he will focus on a lot of water issues and internal issues on the environment related to zebra mussels and ensuring that we're protecting our irrigation system against that. We've got a new water transfer system to create more transparency. We've got continuing monitoring and implementation of our new tailings ponds policies. We have monitoring that we need to do of air and water to ensure that they are within reasonable limits. We've got methane regulations as well that have to be implemented with the pathway to get to 75% reduction by 2035. So he's going to be very busy on all of those. I would anticipate that Minister Rajan Sawhney and our Minister Brian Jean are the 2 that are going to take the largest lead, because much of this pipeline has to be built through British Columbia. So that will be also a role that I will take on. But Minister Sawhney has already done many visits to British Columbia to meet with bands on the ground there, because there is going to be a large Indigenous ownership stake within that new future pipeline. So I would anticipate that she'll continue to take the lead on that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Premier. Edward Jan from City News. I know in the past you have mentioned that your government could potentially be looking at amending recall legislation. As recalls are ramping up against members of your government, could you potentially make any of those changes this year, and if so, when? Well,
the way the legislation is currently written, there is an exclusion window, 12 months after an election and 12 months before an election. And so that exclusion window would begin in October of 2026. So I would anticipate if there's going to be changes, that would be the time we would make them.
Okay. And another question here on Prashant Srikumar, the individual who died at Grey Nuns Hospital. I know you released some comments on social media, but we were just wondering, what is the government planning to do when it comes to people receiving care in our hospitals, wait times, and just being able to get the necessary care that they need?
Well, first of all, as I have to the family and friends of Mr. Srikumar, I've offered my sincere condolences, and we began immediately an investigation. We, first of all, understand the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is doing an independent investigation, but on top of that, Acute Care Alberta is also going to have a comprehensive review of the circumstances leading to Mr. Srikumar's death, with Covenant Health participating in the process. And so we are going to await the outcome of both of those investigations, and we'll have more to say once we understand the circumstances better.
Hi, Premier. Dane Patterson, the Canadian Press. Just asking a question from my colleague. They'd interviewed Peter Guthrie, and they'd said that Guthrie had said they were working, that you folks are working quickly to get their new, or they're working quickly to get their new party up and running, because they're worried that you will try to preempt their organizing by calling a spring election. I know you already talked about that a little bit. Just want to contextualize with this a bit, see what your response is to that.
Well, we have a fixed election date, October 18th of 2027. We have an electoral boundaries commission that is doing their work and going to add 2 new seats to adjust for the fact that we've had hundreds of thousands of newcomers come into our province. And so our intention is to continue to work for the next 2 years on the mandate that we were elected to govern on. I mean, we have fixed election dates for a reason, and we have 4-year mandates for a reason. And so we intend to continue to fulfill our mandate.
And on the water main break here in Calgary, what can you tell Calgarians who are frustrated by water restrictions again?
Oh, boy, frustration doesn't begin to describe what we're seeing with what happened in Calgary. You know, Calgary had years where they were having a much higher level of water leakage than any other municipality. You can go and ask Bill about that. They were having 20% leakages out of their water system. And yet after the floods, for 10 years, they didn't bother to do any investigation on the water main. And you have to ask the question, well, who was the mayor after the floods of 2013 until he just decided to retire? And that was Naheed Nenshi. So when you look back on who is ultimately politically responsible for making sure that taxpayers of Calgary are having this critical infrastructure invested in, they have a water utility run by the city of Calgary. And all of this should have been identified early so that now subsequent mayors are not having to deal with it. So that's one frustration. And then another frustration is that after having 2 major shutdowns last year and hearing that there's an all clear, there apparently is an administrative report sitting on somebody's desk that the council hasn't even seen yet. And so I think that they need to cough up that report so we can understand what happened. I've got a council of my ministers that are watching this. We are prepared to help Minister Farkas and Mayor Farkas and his council in any way possible. But the seeds of the problem today, make no mistake, began under previous administrations. And so we want to ensure that there's a full review done here, and we intend to make sure that we are involved in every step of the way. And they've got to address these issues for the long term. I have a lot of confidence that Mayor Farkas understands the seriousness of this. I think he has done a tremendous job communicating under very difficult circumstances. But remember, he's only been here for 2 years, and so, or for 2 months. And so the problems that we're seeing today have a deep-seated problem going all the way back to 2014 and earlier.
Thanks, Premier.
Thank you. We have time for a few more questions. We're going to head over to the phones. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Karina Zapata from CBC News. Your line is open.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. Just to also follow up on the water main break, can you speak more specifically to what kind of assistance might be available from the province?
Well, I think, I'm looking at whether or not we need to have more direct oversight. We do oversight over a lot of other utilities. We do oversight over natural gas utilities, over electrical utilities, because we have found some problems in the ways in which they have been managed by local authorities. So that will be one of the things that we have to look at, is whether it's time for us to do more oversight over water utilities, whether or not we can have repair orders that we issue when it is pretty clear that you've got an outlier on water leakages that are occurring. One of the changes that we're making in our water policy is return flow credit, and that's what happens after water's been treated and goes back into the system, available for downstream users. We have an interest as a province in making sure there's a maximum amount of clean water flowing downstream from Calgary, so that would be another thing that we would have a look at. But let's remember, water systems are 100% at the moment municipal responsibility. They have a utility set up where ratepayers are paying on a regular basis to not only receive the water, but also ensure that the infrastructure is up to standard. They also have seen a massive increase in the amount of property taxes that they've paid over the intervening period. So even if the water rates were not enough to be able to manage infrastructure, this is core business of government, is to make sure that these things are prioritized. So I will be working with my ministers as we go through and wait to see the administrative report released, and we'll see what kind of additional oversight that we need to have in this area.
And this is obviously a very expensive problem to fix. Could there be any financial help coming from the province? Obviously, understanding that you're saying this is a municipal jurisdiction.
Well, I can tell you, when we put dollars now into municipal infrastructure, we have oversight. That is the reason why we have a joint committee now with Green Line. That one went off the rails, and we are at the table making sure that it doesn't go off the rails again. And so any dollars that we would put into assisting would come with a great deal more provincial oversight. So we're not at that point yet where we've made a decision on how we're going to go forward, but this has got to be unacceptable to the residents of Calgary. To have a pipe that was supposed to last 100 years fail now twice in 2 years, and to not know that it was coming and not know when we're going to see an end to the repairs or an end to the problems, that is a failure, quite frankly, of oversight. And so we're going to watch and see what the new council has to say about it when the report is released, and we'll talk with them at that time about how they're going to repair it for the long term.
All right, and we have time for one last question. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Noah Brennan from Post Media Calgary. Your line is open.
Hi there. I was just going to ask if you could just tell us a bit about your conversations with the city in recent days and what the province is doing kind of immediately just to support those response efforts.
Yeah, so Mayor, I got a call at I think 10:38 at night from Mayor Farkas, and I thought, oh, he wouldn't be calling me unless there was something really urgent, and sure enough, it was. I also saw that he reached out to the Liberal MP as well, Corey Hogan, to make sure that the federal government was involved and aware of what was going on here. And we are on standby, just watching to see if they have any expertise of ours that they would that they need to tap into. It sounds like because the repairs were so new from last year that they do have a supply lined up, and they've got the materials on site to be able to repair, which is great. But remember, we also build water infrastructure. Devin Dreeshen, our transportation minister, is involved through his department in building out water infrastructure in rural municipalities, 2 rural municipalities. So if there's any expertise that is needed there, then we are more than happy to provide that. At the moment, there has not been an ask, but this is, again, water in Calgary and Edmonton are on utilities, and this is the kind of thing that people pay their water rates for at pretty substantial rates in order to make sure that this work is done. And I think it should be unacceptable to Calgarians that they discovered last year that the pipe hadn't been monitored for more than 10 years, starting in 2014. And now, here we are a year later, going through exactly the same thing, which everybody feared is being out of water in the middle of winter when we're looking at potential minus 30 days ahead. So I can understand the frustration of Calgarians, and we are going to have to make sure that there's more provincial oversight so that this doesn't happen again. It might be interesting to you to call EPCOR and find out why it is they don't have these problems. Because when this happened last year, I called EPCOR to see, because they operate their water utility in a different way in the Edmonton area. And my understanding is that they have a proactive policy on maintaining their pipes. And so they didn't anticipate that they'd have these kinds of problems. So we might want to look at what other large municipal water systems, water utilities do to manage their assets, to make sure that we have comparable asset management happening at the City of Calgary.
Thank you. And some city officials have indicated that this most recent break wasn't necessarily a huge surprise. Did it come as a surprise to you?
Well, remember what happened last year. Like they worked diligently to get the pipe repaired in time for Stampede. And, thankfully they did, but then they had to shut it down for several more weeks after that to repair 23 hotspots. And so you would have thought that they would have found all the hotspots based on that extensive review. So, yeah, I was surprised that this occurred again so quickly, especially so close to where the last break was. So, again, I think that all the council members are asking the same questions that we are, is what does that report say? How did this happen? And how can we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Thank you. And that'll conclude today's press conference. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks for watching. Please feel free to suggest any topics to be covered by South Sudan Diversity, and remember to subscribe if you like what you see. To subscribe if you like what you see.